At the moment for Nigeria, things don't exactly look very good, even though we've come out of a recession, but some numbers are pretty scary. Nigeria has 9% of the world's death by children at birth. We have 14% in terms of mothers, maternal, of the world's total. Those are not very good numbers. Our poverty numbers are very bad. We actually have the highest absolute poverty numbers in the world. Considering the fact that we're not the most populous country in the world, these are really scary numbers. We've made progress in certain other areas, especially areas that government has not been involved with, like music, like movies, which has helped us as a country to export our soft power. More than ever before, Nigeria's perception abroad has been improved by our skills, not just even in music and movies, also our intellectual strength as individuals. The people of Nigeria are very, very enterprising, and we've shown that in our representations in some of the biggest international organizations. We've shown that in terms of our representations in some of the best universities all around the world. Nigerians topping classes, finishing with some world record results. We've shown that in, of course, the way we've exported our music, which also is a kind of soft power, not just across the African continent, but actually globally. These are good aspects. But as a collective, when it comes to Nigeria, in terms of governance, in terms of delivering the goods and dividends of democracy, we've not really done well. This is not an attack on any individual government. This is not an attempt to try to make an excuse for somebody to be voted in or be voted out. This is just me being very, very truthful about the state of Nigeria. Things can be much better. Recently also, the police have shown that they've not really gotten used to the reality of democracy, because there is no reason, it doesn't make sense to have the police go manhandle people, peaceful protesters like the Big Bang Girls protesters. These are things we need to talk about. I also think that civil society haven't done so well in the past, may need to actually step up their game for the times. Also, for the individual citizen to stop seeing the reality of governance via the prism of whether something has been done by an APC person or by a PDP person or by someone they like or someone they hate. We have to come to the table and understand that this is the only country we've got. This country is bigger than individuals. Individuals will eventually die, but by and large, the country will remain. We must commit to a future of Nigeria that is just a future of Nigeria that works, a future of Nigeria that delivers on the goods and dividends of democracy, a future of Nigeria that is focused on justice, a future of Nigeria where peace is the norm and not violence and kidnappings and terrorism. These things are possible, but we must commit to making them happen for our future. First of all, there is no utopia. There is no utopia. There is no El Dorado. Some of the best countries in the world have some of the highest suicide rates, has to be said. Some of the highest suicide rates in the world actually in Scandinavian countries, and they are some of the best organized countries in the world. So there's no El Dorado, there's no utopia. So when you say ideal, you need to pay attention to the fact that ideal is not a state of utopia or El Dorado. Ideal for me is a country that works. A country that you know that when you graduate from school and you've developed competencies, you will either find a job or you have enough tools to create something that creates jobs. A country that you know that your property rights and your human rights are guaranteed, that the laws are above the men and the women, not a country where some men and some women are above the laws. A country that you know that the citizens are actually the owners and the powers of reality rather than those that were elected to govern them. A country where freedom is the norm, a country where peace is the norm, a country where justice is the norm, a country where poverty is the outlier and prosperity is the norm, a country where you don't have to know someone to be plugged into your rights as a citizen. And all of these things, I think, are normal things. They're not things that people should have to necessarily aspire to or dream of. And I really do think that Nigeria has everything to be that country. I haven't said anything about flying cars or flying taxis. I haven't said anything about trains that go between Abuja and that go from Abuja to Lagos in 2 hours. I haven't said anything about an airport that hosts 20, 50 million people per year. Because the truth is, when we do the basics, when we get the basics right, all of those other things that are like advanced realities of the fourth industrial revolution, they automatically fall into place. You just need to get the basics right. It's like when you want to build a house. Once the foundation is set right, you can build anything on top of it. The same way for a young person, a baby starts to school, a child goes to nursery school, the child becomes a teenager, goes to secondary school, the child becomes a young adult, still a teenager more or less, goes to university, graduates with a solid result. If that foundation is set right, even if the person doesn't even find a job as soon as they step out, the foundation is their guarantee that when they go through life, they've gotten the basic education to make them not just know what they were taught in school, but to actually also give them the mental strength and basis to be able to face life, to be able to think logically, to be rational about situations, to be able to see the world in the way that somebody that has gone through that foundation has faced. And I think that's what Nigeria has been lacking. That foundation is not exactly there. And I also think that even though we're a country of about 50, 80 years old, it is never too late to set the foundations right. We can start with our 1999 Constitution, which makes it look like, for instance, that once somebody has ruled Nigeria as president or head of state, the person becomes invalid. Because that's the only reason that you would tell me that after you become head of state or president, the country has to take care of all your medicals, the country has to buy your cars, the country has to pay for your drivers, your cook, buy you a house, send you abroad. It's only an invalid that things like that should be set up for. These are the things, that's just one of the many anomalies in the 1999 Constitution. And we might have to start from there to start to set this country aright. I was in a place where I thought it was a question of just get the right leader and things will be fine. If you get the right leader, things will be fine to an extent, but the ultimate reality of Nigeria will not be fine based on, to start with, the Constitution, the Nigerian system, the issues of transparency, the issues of accountability. Social learning theory makes us understand, for instance, that whatever you don't punish will thrive. If you don't punish crime, more people will get into crime. The average human being actually wants to break the law, not the average Nigerian. The average human being wants to break the law. But when you put disincentives in place for things like that, then fewer people want to. Because, for instance, if you know that if you steal $1 billion, $2 billion, you definitely will go to jail. You not go to jail. You will not try to steal. But if you know that the bigger the money you steal, the less likely you are to go to jail, of course, it just incentivizes actions like that. These are the things that Nigeria as a country has to look at. And these are beyond issues of APC, PDP. These are beyond issues of election. These are issues of a generation. These are issues of the future. And these are issues that every individual citizen, leader, voted for or not voted for, has to prioritize when it comes to the reality of Nigeria. Because ultimately, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, Ijaw, Ilaja, or whatever, Nigeria gets to cost everybody if it doesn't work. I don't think that youth is a currency for leadership or competence. I think that we miss the point when, in demanding for better leadership, we keep making too much noise about young people, youth. It's like more or less asking to say that because Yorubas have not been president over a certain period, let's make Yorubas president or Igbos president, or say, oh, we've had 2 Muslim presidents over the last. I'm just giving examples. Let's bring a Christian president. I put these arguments together with the arguments about young people, because that argument doesn't suggest that you're in a quest for better leadership that comes from competence, dedication, charisma, care, capacity, character. Those are the things that matter. And if you find a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old with all of those qualities, why not? Because if the person has those qualities, then the person has a right to not just run, also has a right to be voted for. If we find a 30, 35-year-old, 40-year-old with those qualities, then of course it's fine. But where we have arguments based on somebody's age, that's sad. You know why it's sad? Because being young is transient. It's not a permanent reality. Everybody that has come to this world wants to eventually become old. So if you demonize people that are older, the people that are not exactly young, to say give young people a chance, it's always been you. Don't forget that the reality is not even about whether old people are in charge. It's a certain class of people. It's a certain class of people, and that class has young people, has old people. A certain ruling class that sort of changes once in a while, but ultimately a certain ruling class that even people that are supposedly not young are deprived of access to power, are deprived of access to development, simply because we've built a cluster. You don't call them a royal family as it were, but they really, in reality, are a kind of royal class, an elitist class that has captured power. So when we ask and demand for better leadership, let's be careful not to fall into this primordial thinking that goes in the line of it's time for young people, it's time for this particular ethnic group, it's time for this particular religious group or whatever. Because certain things are universal. Competence is universal. Character is universal. Having the right ethics and values are universal. Having the right charisma, being caring, they are all universal. And these things can be deployed to make any country in the world work. But being a young person, there is no proof that your youth will make you a good leader. Nobody has proven that being a youth will make you a good leader. And nobody has proven that being somebody that is much older than a youth, somebody that is on the north of 50, will make you a bad leader. So let's not make arguments that cannot stand the test of time. Let's make arguments that whether you speak of them in terms of before Christ, in terms of after Christ, in terms of the current millennium, those arguments will stand. And that's an argument for a leadership that cares, a leadership that is competent, a leadership that has sound character, a leadership that has a deep understanding of the issues, a leadership that is willing to march on toes to satisfy the majority of the people to get the job done. For me, that's what matters. I will not make an argument for leadership based on my youth, primarily because youth for me is not a currency of power. And I would not want to be part of any group or organization or whatever that wants to take power strictly based on youth. It doesn't work for me. And I have a right to say, because if I was on the north of 50, somebody would say, this person is saying it because he's not a young person. I don't even, first of all, consider myself a youth, but I'm a young person. And I'm never going to join any group as a leader because they say I'm the youth token. I don't want to be a token. I want to earn my rights as a leader anywhere, anytime, any day. And when they say that children are the leaders of tomorrow, it's an assumption that when you become a young person and youth, you are a leader in your own right. And you must start to prove it by showing your competence, capacity, and all the values of leadership wherever you find yourself. Having said that, I should also say that Nigeria would do better if we had more young, competent people in power, because what we've seen over the years is people mostly on the north of 50. Again, like I said, I have no problems with that, but the combination of wisdom, the combination of the wisdom of the aged and the strength and vitality of the young, and the combination of their collective mental strength and their collective intelligence and their knowledge, their character, all of the values that make somebody a better leader. When you put all of those things together, things will work. So it's a balance, but ultimately, no argument should be made for leadership based on your youth or based on anything other than these things that you can use anywhere in the world to become a leader. You need to look at Nigeria in terms of its reality. We, according to some numbers, are a country of about 300 ethnic groups. We have some 36 states. We are of different languages. I think it would be somehow to have the same part of the country rule over and again. The reason is also because every part of the country has competent people. So you cannot say, oh, but you know, these parts, they are very competent. They have the right character and charisma and the caring spirit for leadership. Yeah, but really and truly, that value can be seen everywhere. So it's a different thing, because there is no part of this country where the people do not have the competence and the power and the character and all the necessities that somebody needs to be a leader. So that's why it's understandable that you would want to move the leadership across the different parts of the country, because primarily you would always find that competence everywhere, and essentially because you need it to balance the country. It's a form of balance. It's a form of negotiation to keep the country one. And where that doesn't work, I personally do not have a problem with the people of Nigeria coming together to have a conversation on whether they truly want to be together or not. I do not believe in a forced union. Nigeria's median age is about 20. And that simply means that the majority of Nigerians are extremely young. And that simply means that if you don't invest in them, the future of Nigeria will pay for it. So that's the most obvious thing anyone could say. It's sad that that's not even obvious to not enough to us as a people. Nigeria is a young country in terms of its average population. We're an extremely young country. If you don't empower these young people, if you don't prepare them for the future, a future where the majority of things are actually uncertain globally, we don't exactly know what's coming, but we know that everything will be disrupted. So young people must be prepared for that future. Nigeria must be prepared for that future. And the only way, the easiest way, the wisest way to prepare Nigeria for that future is to empower its young people, because they are the ones that will be in that future ultimately. And then when it comes to health, what can you do without a sound health? So you need a country that is mentally strong, and you need a country that is physically strong to meet the challenges of the future. But of course, it's not limited to that. To get to that future, you need to be alive today. That's why power has to work. That's why Nigeria has to liberalize its economy, full liberalization. That's why certain aspects of the economy must be left in private hands. That's why we have to make laws actually count. That's why our justice system has to work. You cannot build a society, let alone a country like Nigeria, on a justice system that is largely not trusted, where judges are actually suspected as being just as corrupt as the average politician. That's not a good thing for a country. And all of these things have to be set in place, even as we look towards building a country where the young people are fully prepared mentally, emotionally, and in every sense, and where the majority of us, if not all of us, are strong enough to meet the challenges of the future. To add to all those ones is to say that Nigerians have to take their destiny in their own hands. We are obsessed with election cycles. When elections are coming, we start to say whether we want to keep somebody or want to bring somebody in. We will never ever change this country by being obsessed with election cycles. If we want this country to work, we must pay attention to how we're governed on a daily basis. On a daily basis, we must challenge authority. We must ask for what we want. We must ask for something to be made better, something to be corrected on a daily basis. And when I say daily basis, I don't mean that everybody has to go out there to protest, but we must always add our voices. A situation where we think that as soon as we change one government, we will change things. For me, I think that's insanity, because we've done that for what? Since before we were born, we're still doing it now, and we've not exactly seen that be a telling agency for change. So I'm not saying elections are not important. Elections are important, but you cannot do something every 4 years and expect that reality will make change happen for you every day. We need to put government on its toes. Another thing that must happen is that we must begin to see our country beyond the binaries of the main political parties, in this case APC or PDP, because too many times what I see is people taking positions based on the political affiliation of who did what. So I have seen people support something because somebody that they feel is in a particular party that they like or belong to has done that thing. And the same people will knock somebody else for doing exactly the same thing because those people do not belong to their party. I personally do not have a problem with people belonging to political parties, but I have a problem with people prioritizing their political parties over Nigeria. Ultimately, Nigeria must always come first. And I cannot sit down here and tell you that I think for most Nigerians, Nigeria comes first. I think for most Nigerians, people, individuals, and their political affiliations come first. And I don't think as a country we will move forward until we prioritize our country above anything else. Partisanship is fine, it's okay, it's democratic, it's normal, it's beautiful. But when push comes to shove, we must all stand for our country. And then when you stand for your country, understand that whatever you do today has a consequence on the future. So if you decide that you want to stand for a political party, remember that political party will not always be in power. If you decide that you want to support an individual over your country, remember that individual will not always be around. And those things that you support them for, if they are bad things and you need to do bad things, will have consequences on the future. That's why I insist that it should be, more than anything else, Nigeria first and then every other thing second. These days, that's not the case, and for us to change our country, that attitude has to change, because you cannot change Nigeria if the attitude of Nigerians does not change.